pumpkin the size of the Carshed. Told you, didn't I, about the big pumpkin? The one you couldn't get into the wheelbarrow. This one was bigger again, Grandad said, sitting down in his wheelbarrow and pointed. About the size of the Carshed. The Carshed? How did it grow so big? Fed it on my compost. They took photos and put them in all the newspapers. What did Granny think? She kept telling me to get rid of it. But what could I do? It went on growing and growing, squashed old Crimson Glory, her favourite rose, and I had to shift the clothesline because she complained about my pumpkin. It was keeping the sun off her washing. It was the 1930s depression. People were hungry and had no jobs. My mate Old Humdrum suggested giving away bits of the pumpkin to anyone who wanted a feed. So we cut a door with a cross-cut saw and dug out the inside with an axe and shovel. We gave away lorry loads and sent railway wagons loaded with great chunks of yellow pumpkin to Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin. Did that stop it growing? It caved in like a basketball that's gone flat. We should pump it up, said my mate Old Humdrum. See what happens. I closed the door on the side of the giant flat pumpkin, and Old Humdrum used his pump off his bike. But the connection got hot, so we had to pinch the pump off your grandmother's bike and use the connection off that. We pumped for 3 days before the giant pumpkin stirred and shook itself as if it was coming to life. It's lifting! Old Humdrum yells. We pump away and the pumpkin rises off the ground. I get our fishing net, throw it over the top, tie it to one end of your grandmother's clothesline. We don't just want it floating away. What happens? Old Humdrum slung your grandmother's clothes basket under the giant pumpkin, like the one under a hot air balloon. He climbed aboard and hung onto the end of the clothesline as the pumpkin tugged and tried to rise higher. Yeah? Your grandmother came to take in her washing, saw Old Humdrum in her clothes basket under the giant pumpkin, her clothesline stretching straight up into the air and all her washing flying like flags. What did Granny say? I couldn't hear for Old Humdrum's screams. Why was he screaming? It's a bit scared of your grandmother. She was shaking her fist at him. He yanked the clothesline and the bottom end came free. The giant pumpkin leapt into the sky and blew away, up over the top of Rangitoto. What about Mr. Humdrum? Last I saw of him, he was jumping up and down, still screaming. The whole shebang, pumpkin, fishing net, basket, clothesline and washing, was drifting towards the Coromandel Range. Next day, Teddy Bronland, on his fishing boat off Mercury Bay, said he heard a yell, looked up and saw it heading towards South America. And that'd be right, Grandad said. It was blowing a westerly at the time. Did you ever see it again? People write to the Herald now and again and say they've seen something sailing overhead with a string of flags hanging underneath. I reckon it's our giant pumpkin drifting around the world with your grandmother's washing and Old Humdrum. Will he be all right? He's got all the pumpkin he can eat. What if he gets sick of it? Hasn't got much choice. Anyway, didn't have to go climbing into the clothes basket, did he? No, I suppose not. Still, Old Humdrum can look after himself. He'll turn up again one day, full of yarns about the giant pumpkin coming down in Africa or Alaska. What if he comes down in the sea? We just have to swim home. He's quite good at dog paddling, Old Humdrum. What if the giant pumpkin floats up towards the sun? Then we'll smell cooked pumpkin. What about Mr. Humdrum? Oh, he can always drill a hole in the pumpkin with his pocket knife, let out a bit of air and come down. He'd soon let us know if he's not enjoying himself. He's got a fairly loud yell, Old Humdrum. Not as loud as your grandmother's, but pretty near. Whenever there's a full moon, I look to see if the giant pumpkin's drifting across the sky. It'd show up against the moon, you know, something that size. Suppose it would, I said to Grandad.